Did you know that certain behaviors can silently erode a man's respect and attraction for you, without you even realizing it? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, revealed that the way we show up in relationships is often shaped by unconscious patterns, deep fears, unresolved wounds, and hidden insecurities that sabotage our own value. The truth is, no matter how much you care for someone, if you fall into these psychological traps, you risk pushing him away permanently. Jung taught that self-worth isn't just about confidence, it's about integration. When we lack awareness of our shadow, the repressed parts of ourselves, we project insecurity or neediness onto others. His concepts of the anima, feminine energy in men, and animus, masculine energy in women, explain why some dynamics feel magnetic, while others drain respect. If you've ever felt undervalued, it's likely one of these 5 unconscious behaviors is at play. Today, we'll break down the 5 most common mistakes that kill your value in a man's eyes, backed by Jung's psychology, and how to shift them. If you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, this will change how you approach relationships forever. The 5 value-killing behaviors. 1. Overdependence in relationships. Sometimes, without even realizing it, your focus begins to shift. Someone becomes the center of your attention. You might find yourself reaching out first, adjusting your plans to accommodate theirs, or setting aside your own needs to maintain harmony. Psychologist Carl Jung described a pattern called anima possession, where emotional energy takes the lead over your inner balance. This can lead to feeling deeply absorbed in a relationship, sometimes at the cost of your own sense of self. Jung suggested that emotional dependency isn't just a personal challenge, it can also affect the dynamic with others. When someone becomes overly reliant on a relationship for stability, it may create unspoken tension or discomfort. This isn't a reflection of anyone's worth. It's a reminder that healthy connections are built when both people feel grounded and secure. Respect for oneself naturally encourages mutual respect in relationships. The way forward isn't about creating distance, it's about building inner strength. Jung's idea of individuation, the journey toward becoming your whole, authentic self, can help. This means nurturing a life that feels meaningful on its own, where relationships bring joy but don't define your identity. It means communicating your feelings with care, setting healthy boundaries, and honoring your values. This approach isn't about trying to control outcomes, it's about self-awareness and well-being. When you feel confident and fulfilled within yourself, it naturally draws people toward you. Because one of the most uplifting and inspiring things is someone who feels whole just as they are. 2. Playing the victim. There's a dangerous comfort in playing the victim, a seductive narrative where every failed relationship, every disappointment, becomes proof that men just can't be trusted. But Carl Jung saw this pattern for what it truly is: unconscious projection, a defense mechanism where we disown our own flaws and pain by casting them onto others. When you say, "Men always hurt me," you're not just describing your experiences, you're revealing a deeper refusal to confront the role you play in your own suffering. Jung taught that victimhood is a prison of our own making. Every time you blame him for not committing, for not caring enough, for being emotionally unavailable, you hand over your power. Worse, you blind yourself to the real work, healing the wounds that attract these dynamics in the first place. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: people treat you how you subconsciously believe you deserve to be treated. If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable men, it's not bad luck. It's an invitation to ask, why does this feel familiar? The way out isn't denial or false positivity. It's shadow work, Jung's process of facing the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. It starts with brutal honesty. Did you ignore red flags because you feared being alone? Did you stay in situations where you weren't valued, hoping he'd change? Accountability isn't self-blame, it's liberation. When you stop seeing yourself as powerless, you reclaim the ability to choose differently. A woman who owns her story, flaws, mistakes, and all, commands respect without demanding it. She doesn't waste time lamenting how others wronged her. She learns, adjusts, and sets boundaries that reflect her worth. Because victimhood keeps you stuck, but accountability? That's how you break the cycle for good. 3. Trying to control him. There's a quiet irony in trying to control love. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. What starts as wanting closeness morphs into something darker, interrogating his texts, resenting his independence, punishing him with silence when he doesn't meet your unspoken expectations. Carl Jung recognized this pattern as the power complex, a desperate attempt to manage another person's behavior because deep down, you don't trust yourself to handle the uncertainty of love. Control isn't strength, it's fear wearing a mask. Every time you demand he prioritize you, every passive-aggressive comment about his female friends, every time you manipulate situations to keep him close, you're not proving your devotion, you're confessing your terror of abandonment. Jung warned that this need to control often backfires spectacularly because no one falls in love with a prison warden. The more you try to force his loyalty, the more you ignite his shadow. His own resistance to being dominated, his primal urge to rebel against constraints. The antidote isn't passive surrender, but self-mastery. Real security comes from turning that controlling energy inward, not to micromanage him, but to cultivate unshakable trust in yourself. Can you sit with the discomfort of not knowing where this is going? Can you focus on building a life so rich that his presence is a gift, not a necessity? Control is the language of anxiety. Trust is the dialect of true confidence. When you stop orchestrating his every move, something remarkable happens. You create space for him to choose you freely. And that choice, made without pressure or manipulation, is the only one that ever really matters. Because love isn't something you can command, it's something you inspire by being someone who doesn't need it to survive. For dimming your light. There's a tragic misconception many women carry, the belief that to be loved, they must make themselves smaller. You bite your tongue when you disagree, laugh at jokes that don't amuse you, and mold your personality into whatever you think he finds most appealing. Carl Jung would recognize this immediately as the rejection of your animus, the masculine energy within every woman that governs logic, assertiveness, and boundary setting. When you suppress these qualities in an attempt to appear more feminine or agreeable, you don't make yourself more lovable, you make yourself forgettable. Jung understood that attraction thrives on polarity, not through exaggerated gender roles, but through the full expression of your complete self. A woman who constantly people-pleases, who shrinks her opinions to avoid conflict, who prioritizes his comfort over her truth, isn't embodying femininity. She's practicing self-erasure. And here's the painful paradox. Men don't fall in love with shadows. They're drawn to women who radiate the kind of authenticity that comes from unapologetically occupying space. Women who can be both soft and strong, who can nurture without neglecting their own convictions. The solution isn't to reject your femininity, but to integrate it with your innate strength. This is what Jung meant by balancing energies. Speaking up when something matters to you, even if your voice shakes. Setting boundaries without apology. Trusting that the right man won't be intimidated by your intelligence or ambition, he'll be captivated by it. Because when you stop dimming your light, you stop attracting men who prefer you in the dark. True magnetism lives at the intersection of vulnerability and sovereignty, the ability to love deeply while standing firmly in your power. A woman who honors all parts of herself doesn't need to chase validation. She becomes the kind of person others move mountains to keep in their lives. And that's not just psychology, that's alchemy. 5. Living through him. There comes a quiet moment in many relationships when you suddenly realize you no longer recognize yourself. The hobbies that once lit you up now collect dust, the friends who knew you best feel distant, and the dreams you used to chase have been quietly shelved to make room for his life, his schedule, his world. Carl Jung called this dangerous phenomenon identity merging, the slow erosion of self that occurs when you mistake love for assimilation. The tragic irony? The more you disappear into the relationship, the less there is for him to actually love. Jung warned that passion cannot survive without differentiation, that essential space where two whole people choose each other, not because they're desperate to belong, but because they're fascinated by what each brings to the table. When you abandon your book club because he prefers quiet weekends, when you stop pursuing your career ambitions to better support his, when you laugh at his jokes but forget how to make your own, you're not building intimacy, you're performing a kind of emotional suicide. And nothing kills desire faster than the realization that the woman he fell for no longer exists. The path back to yourself begins with what Jung termed individuation, the lifelong work of becoming who you truly are, separate from any relationship. This means resurrecting abandoned passions not as a threat to your partnership, but as its necessary counterbalance. It means maintaining friendships that remind you of your essence outside his gaze. Most crucially, it requires the courage to ask, if this relationship ended tomorrow, who would I be? The answer should never be nothing. Because here's the secret healthy couples know: love isn't about two halves becoming whole. It's about two wholes choosing to walk side by side. The woman who preserves her identity doesn't just save herself. She keeps the relationship alive with the oxygen of her own evolving story. And that's the only love story worth telling. The patterns we've uncovered, neediness, victimhood, control, self-abandonment, and identity loss, all share the same root: a fractured relationship with yourself. Carl Jung would say these aren't just relationship mistakes, but spiritual crises in disguise. Every time you prioritized his perception over your truth, every moment you twisted yourself into shapes to keep his attention, you weren't just losing him, you were losing you. The good news? Just as these behaviors were learned, they can be unlearned. But it requires going far deeper than surface-level dating advice. This is excavation work, mining the darkest corners of your psyche to reclaim what's been buried. Shadow work isn't about self-punishment, it's about radical honesty. Those desperate texts you sent at 2 a.m., they weren't about love, they were about terror. The way you tolerated disrespect? Not kindness, but a fear of being alone. Jung's method demands you sit with these uncomfortable truths until they lose their power over you. Start with this question: what am I most afraid would happen if I stopped doing these things? Would he leave? Would you have to face your emptiness? The answers will point directly to the wounds needing healing. Keep a shadow journal. When you feel that familiar pull to people please or chase, pause. Ask, which version of me is driving right now, the healed one or the hungry ghost? But awareness alone isn't enough. You must rebuild your identity brick by brick, starting with what Jung called the sacred no, the boundaries that honor your worth even when it's uncomfortable. Create a daily ritual where you reconnect with yourself outside any man's influence. Morning pages where you dump your unfiltered thoughts, solo dates to rediscover what actually delights you, or revisiting abandoned creative projects. This isn't selfishness, it's survival. When a woman can say, "I know who I am when no one's watching," she becomes impervious to the games that once trapped her. Then comes the most transformative tool: Jung's active imagination. Unlike passive daydreaming, this is a deliberate dialogue with your highest self. Each morning, close your eyes and visualize her, the unshakable version of you who speaks with quiet confidence, who walks away from what doesn't serve her, whose joy comes from within. Watch how she carries herself, how she responds to flattery or neglect with equal poise. Then ask, what would she do today? Small choices accumulate: the book she'd read instead of stalking his social media, the workout she'd prioritize over waiting for his call. Over time, this ceases to be imagination and becomes integration. The paradox Jung discovered is this: the more whole you become, the less you'll tolerate relationships that demand your disintegration. You'll stop confusing intensity for intimacy, attention for worth. And when you do meet the right man, it won't feel like salvation. It'll feel like meeting a fellow traveler who recognizes the work you've done. Because true love doesn't ask you to shrink. It meets you at the height of your own becoming. So tell me, which of these 5 behaviors hit closest to home? Was it the way neediness quietly repels, or how playing the victim keeps you stuck in the same painful cycles? Maybe you recognized yourself in the controlling tendencies that backfire, or that moment you realized you've been dimming your light for too long. Whatever it is, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know which insight resonated most. Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. If this video shifted something in you, don't let this be the end. Take that energy and keep going. Hit like if you're ready to break these patterns for good, and subscribe because we're just getting started. Next week, we'll dive deeper with Jungian secrets to make him obsessed without losing yourself, where we'll explore how to create magnetic attraction without compromising an ounce of your worth. Because true love shouldn't require you to disappear, it should inspire you to become more yourself than ever. Until then, remember this: the most powerful relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Nurture it, protect it, and never apologize for the space you take up in this world. See you in the next one.